What is happening, YouTube? Cowboy here, and welcome to the ability showcase for everyone's favorite troll, the latest addition to the Nexus, Zul'Jin, Warlord of the Amani. So Zul'Jin enters the Nexus as a ranged assassin, and a very brutal one at that. I would go as far as to say that this character has probably the best sustained DPS currently in the game, beating out heroes like Bala, Twin Blades Varian, Greymane. As you can see right now, we are averaging close to 1,450 damage per second, and it's actually going up more and more every time we get a basic attack. So, very, very high damage potential if left unchecked. He can absolutely devastate high priority objectives, stuff like the Immortals on Battlefield of Eternity. If you have someone tanking a boss, he can melt the boss. If left alone with a push wave, he can devastate your towers, your keeps, your fort, even your core when done right. But this obviously comes with the risk of being at 1 health. So the core ideology of Zul'Jin is that we have a very high-risk, high-reward character here that, when played correctly, can absolutely decimate, but when not played correctly, can very easily die and get killed. So all in all, because of that, I think he has probably one of the highest skill caps of all the heroes we've seen. Good management of your trait and keeping your health low to do damage while surviving, I think is going to be something that's very hard for a lot of new players to do. And I think because of that, especially right now, at least at launch, I think we're going to see a lot of unintentional feeding with this character, very similar to how Leoric was when he came out. But anyway, let's go into an overview of the talent builds real fast, then we'll talk about the abilities, and then lastly the talent choices, what I would suggest and why. So I feel there's two primary talent builds for Zul'Jin, and this is from my own experimenting. Right now I have him at level 6, so I've done quite a few games with him already, and then spent probably about an hour or so analyzing him in try mode. But the first build is obviously an auto attack focused build, and that's what you were seeing us do 1,500 sustained damage with. We're going to go for U1 Axe, Let the Killing Begin, Recklessness, Tazdingo, Forest Medicine, Ferocity, and then Amani Resilience. Now this build, obviously, it's purely about auto-attacking. You're playing around the death threshold a lot more with this, which is why you're going to want Tazdingo. That's going to allow you to basically keep up the unkillable. As you can see, you pop that, unkillable, because level 20 talent, we're gaining health. And just to kind of showcase what the actual damage of this can do when used properly. Now we're unkillable, and you can see just how fast we're able to burn through that structure. You know, it's not really hard at all. The second build, on the other hand, this is a little bit safer build, and I think we're going to actually see more of this than the auto attack build, even though I really like the auto attack build. That's a build focused around Twin Cleave. So for that, we go Arcanite Axes, Troll's Blood, Wrong Place, Wrong Time, Guillotine, Forest Medicine, Swirling Death, and then Buzzsaw. Now, this build, on the other hand, it's a lot safer. We're able to stay back and still do very high amounts of damage, but at the same time, you know, it kind of takes away some of the iconicness of this character. You know, you don't think of him as a ranged, like, I think of him as a upfront, constantly just whack, 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 whack. Like, he reminds me of Star Platinum from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, like rah, 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 just blowing people away. And you don't do that with this build. You're sitting back, you're chucking out your axes, and they're doing a ton of damage, as you can see with the rotation. You know, we just melted that tower. So it's very fun, but it's much, much safer. So anyway, let's go into the abilities, talk about how to use what and why, and then we're going to go into a talent analysis before wrapping this one up. So our first ability, Grievous Throw. Pretty straightforward. We throw an axe forward, it'll mark an enemy. You can see by this visual indicator. 252, 378. So 50% damage increase, pretty straightforward on your next 3 basic attacks. Very good harass tool early on. What I like to do is see 252 with that, and then with the axe, if he'll stop running, come back, 378. With our trade up as well, 441. So early on, basically, what you should aim to do is Grievous Axe a hero and then hit him with your Berserker trait to get as much damage as possible. Moving on from there, we have Twin Cleave. We're going to throw out 2 axes. Each axe will do damage. Each axe will also apply a 15% slow. So if both axes hit, they're slowed by 30. Pretty straightforward. Takes a little bit of positioning to use if you take the talents, because as you can see, the apex circle for maximum damage is pretty small. But you can do some interesting things with this. You know, you can position it like this, and we're going to hit the whole wave with it. So very nice wave clear potential from that ability, but definitely a little bit of practice to use. Great on enemies that are retreating to try and catch them. On top of that, decent tool when you're retreating. Just, you know, chuck it out and hope the axes will hit somebody that's chasing after you and slow them down. But very much an engage or chase tool, not so much a mid-team fight. Because if you're already in the fight, you know, that's not gonna hit. Unless he's literally on top of you, so the axe throw-out hits, it's not gonna work. Third ability, Regeneration. Pretty straightforward. You pop this, a cool little jingle plays, and we're gonna get some health back. And this makes Zul'Jin a very effective lane bully. It lets him get in lane, do damage to people, toss out those axes as they're running. And if you lost a bunch of health from playing with Berserker or fighting, just pop Regeneration and heal back up. As for ultimates, Tazdingo being the first ultimate choice. And that one was pretty straightforward. You saw us use that a second ago, where we just, you know, we do a ton of damage. Obviously, we become unkillable. Guillotine, on the other hand, a little bit trickier to use. There's a little bit of a cast time on this, and then a little bit of travel time. Like, by the time you click, it's about 2 seconds before it's going to hit. But as you can see, as our health gets lower, Guillotine gets up to very high amounts of damage. At base, we're looking at 463. If we're down to that 1% threshold, we're looking at damage in the range of like a pyroblast. So as you can see, we're looking at 2,300. Watch, we're gonna wait right here. We're hidden. Enemy team's fighting. Boop. Enemy team's dead. So I'm not sure why it did 2,800 right there. To be honest, that's a little bit weird because it says 2,300. So I'm not sure why I hit him for 3K with it, but I will take it. That's awesome. And of course, with the Buzzsaw, it goes forward, dealing 50% additional damage in a line. So very interesting skill, but very, very much of a sit back. This one, you know, because of the cast and travel time, you kind of need people to be... you need something that's going to help facilitate this, because as you can see, that's a little, like, you got about a second of it going up and then a second of it going down. But the one big benefit is the enemy doesn't have any indication. This is kind of like Chromie's AoE blast, where you don't know where it's going to land. It's just going to happen, and you just really hope that it doesn't land on you. So all in all, really nice ability, just a little bit tricky to use. So anyway, at this point, let's go into... Oh, his trait, excuse me. Of course, can't forget about the trait. So trait's pretty straightforward. Every 1% health we're missing, we attack 1% faster. Indicated right here by our Berserker, so you have a nice visual indicator of how fast you're hitting. On top of that, when we activate it, 25% more damage at the cost of 2% health per attack. And you can see we have these nice little runes to give you a very easy visual indication of whether or not Berserker is active or not. And good use of Berserker is really what's going to separate the good Zul'Jins from the bad Zul'Jins. Because just sitting there blindly keeping it on and bleeding health is a very easy way to die. In general, I only put it on when I'm harassing something, when I'm safely harassing something. Like, I know that I can poke them and they're not going to come back and do me. Just being like, oh, it's a fight to the death, and turning on Berserker, it'll get you killed. Because you're bleeding, like, you got to think about how much faster you're hitting than the enemy hero. And on top of that, every attack you throw out, you're losing 2% of your health. Not smart to do. But anyway, let's go into the talent analysis and why, and we'll wrap that up right after that. So, looking at our first tier, pretty straightforward. You know, obviously auto attacks, you want axe, otherwise you want Arcanite axes. Bone Slicer is almost never worth it. The only thing that's nice about this is the all enemies get pierced by it effect, but the 15% bonus damage, that's already outclassed by U1 axe by the time you have 18 stacks. Moving into the second tier, this one's a little bit more situational. Obviously, for an auto attack build, Let the Killing Begin is pretty nice, because you can, 15 seconds and basic attacks refresh the duration. Pretty easy to keep that ability going. Personally, I really like Troll's Blood, just because we get 25% healing by default, and then this is going to give us 75% more. So, if you add those on, you're getting 43.75% healing from one regeneration, which is nice because 50% is kind of the sweet spot threshold. You know, if you take Recklessness, that's a 50% bonus. If we take Arcanine Axis, that's a 50% bonus. So this allows us to hover at that threshold, basically fight almost down to the death, and then pop Regeneration to bring us right back to that 50% threshold. Headhunter, very situational ability. If you're against a bunch of stealth heroes, it can be nice just to pop them out before a team fight and get an easy pick. But all in all, it's just very situational, not powerful enough to be like, this is the pick, this is the go-to. Moving on to the next tier, also pretty straightforward, you know, if you're going for a twin axis build, wrong place, wrong time. Otherwise, 25% bonus attack damage, below 50% health, pretty standard for auto attack. Vicious Assault sounds nice, but really just don't like this all that much. You know, Recklessness, with an auto attack build, we're looking at almost an extra 100 attack damage per attack. Getting the bonus damage on 3 more attacks, so a total of 6 versus 3, versus 100% uptime on an extra 100 damage. I think Recklessness is just the clear winner here, so I wouldn't suggest Vicious Assault. Ultimate, obviously with an auto attack build, you're going to want TASDingo. You're going to be able, you want to be able to fight to the death. And the other nice thing is good use of this. You know, you can stop things like a Chromie Blast, like a Pyro Blast, like a Nova Snipe and survive. But at the same time, there's obviously very hard counters to this. Things like Stitch's Gorge eating you, things like getting taunted by a Barian before you can pop it, damage over time effects. So a lot of things to be aware of. TASDingo doesn't make you invincible. It just makes you unkillable for 4 seconds. And that's not too long. But obviously with an auto attack build, you kind of need that. Guillotine, on the other hand, much safer. You know, you fight down till you're really low, back out, throw a guillotine in the air for 2,000 damage, and wreck somebody with it. Into tier 13, Forest Medicine I really like because this allows you to pop your E, mount up, and then continue whatever the hell you were doing. Whether it's moving to a gank, moving to an objective, you don't have to stand still for 4 seconds to channel. Voodoo Shuffle I think is nice, but I feel that we're in a much heavier stun meta than we are in a root and slow meta, so I don't like it as much. If you're against the team that has like a Malfuri and Jaina, obviously because of a situational you know, team like that, Voodoo Shuffle may show yourself some more worth because it's going to save you. But all in all, I really like Forest Medicine more just because, I mean, we can even fight with that up, you know? If we've lost damage in a fight, we can pop that and then continue to attack from the backline while still healing. Whereas otherwise, without this, any actions at all cancel it out. You're basically a dead fish in the water for 4 seconds. I have the Zul'Jin, not bad on paper, you know, 25% movement speed for 2 seconds, but honestly, I feel that if we're going to secure a kill, you know, we got Twin Cleave. Twin Cleave is going to slow them and do damage. So if we need to chase something down, you know, we can already throw, well, it looks like Thrall is way the hell gone already, but we can throw that out, and that's usually enough for our chase, so I don't really feel we need that. On to tier 16, once again, pretty straightforward. If you're going for the Axis build, you know, making these cycle twice and hit enemies on each revolution, obviously a big DPS increase to that, especially if you have stuns that keep somebody in place. Lacerate, don't really feel we need that extra slow. You know, we already got 30%. 30% is kind of like the standard slow number for a lot of potent slows in the game. So I'd rather focus on a potential damage increase over additional slow, and then obviously for auto attack, Ferocity is pretty straightforward. As for our last one, obviously just upgrade whatever ultimate you took. And Snare is honestly terrible. The range on this is, it's about where my mouse is right now, so almost half the distance of Grievous throw. You know, it's a 2-second root, 60-second cooldown, and it can hit creeps instead of heroes. All in all, just not a very powerful ability. You know, I feel that there's way better choices than some shitty root for 2 seconds. But anyway, that's all there really is to Zul'Jin. Definitely a really fun hero, but obviously with the downside of very high risk, high reward, being able to manage your health. So at this point, I'm obviously going to have a couple of matches showcasing what he is capable of. I'm going to do him very similar to how I did Varium, where it's just a couple of games. They're not necessarily guide-oriented, but more just kind of showing the various builds in action. And I'll have a link to those in the description of this video. So thanks for coming by, guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you next time when a new hero enters the Nexus.